11 days after walking free from prison, Nikko Jenkins carved his name into Omaha's bloodiest summer with 4 execution-style murders. He claimed an ancient Egyptian serpent god named Apophis commanded every kill. 10 days. 4 innocent lives snuffed out across Nebraska's largest city. A 26-year-old man who brought a loaded gun to elementary school had finally graduated to something far more deadly. Jenkins didn't just terrorize Omaha, he came from a family that had been doing it for decades. Was this divine delusion driving a broken mind? Or calculated manipulation from a stone-cold killer who knew exactly how to game the system? August 11, 2013. 2:15 a.m. Spring Lake Park sprawls across Omaha's northwest side like a postcard of American tranquility. Families picnic here on weekends. Joggers circle the lake at dawn. Children feed ducks from wooden piers that stretch into mirror-still water. But on this humid Nebraska night, 2 friends sat talking in a white pickup truck parked near the boat ramp. Juan Uribe Pena, 26, had worked construction all week. Sweat-stained hands. Calloused palms. A man who built things. Jorge Ruiz, 29, drove delivery trucks across the Midwest. Mile after mile of highway memorized behind dark eyes that had seen America's heartland from every angle. They chose this spot for privacy. For conversation that couldn't happen anywhere else. What they discussed in those final moments would die with them. The first gunshot shattered the lake silence at 2:47 a.m. Then another. Then silence again, the kind that follows unspeakable violence. By sunrise, Omaha Police Detective Derek Moore stood beside the pickup truck, staring at what remained of 2 lives cut short. Blood spattered the windshield in arterial patterns that told their own story. Both men shot execution style. Professional. Cold. Calculated. Uribe Pena slumped over the steering wheel, a single bullet wound behind his right ear. Ruiz had tried to run, his door hung open, his body twisted across the passenger seat. The shooter had chased him down. Finished the job. No robbery. No sexual assault. No gang colors or drug paraphernalia. Just death, delivered with surgical precision by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Detective Moaz had worked homicide for 12 years. Gang shootings. Domestic disputes. Bar fights gone wrong. But this felt different. Colder. The kind of killing that suggested the shooter had crossed a line most people never even approached. In 11 days, he would learn exactly how far across that line Nikko Jenkins had already traveled. The morning sun climbed over Omaha's skyline as news vans arrived at Spring Lake Park. Channel 6. Channel 7. The World Herald crime reporter who'd covered violence in this city for 2 decades. They filmed the yellow tape. The covered bodies. The detective taking notes beside a truck that would never carry its owners home again. But what none of them knew, what couldn't possibly know, was that Juan Uribe Pena and Jorge Ruiz were just the beginning. Their killer had walked out of prison 11 days earlier with nothing but a bus ticket and $25 in gate money. No job. No home. No support system except a family whose criminal record stretched back generations that he'd spent those 11 days planning, watching, choosing, and now he'd tasted blood. The newscast that evening led with Spring Lake Park. 2 men found shot to death. No suspects. No motive. Police asking for tips from anyone who might have seen something suspicious. What they didn't report was the detail that would haunt investigators for months afterward. Both victims had been shot with the same gun that would kill 2 more people before August ended. Omaha had no idea its summer of terror had just begun. September 16, 1986. Denver, Colorado. Nikko Allen Jenkins entered the world screaming. His mother, Lori Jenkins, was 16. His father, David McGee, was already gone. The birth certificate listed no father's name, just a blank space where stability should have been. By age 7. Most children worry about spelling tests and playground bullies. Nikko Jenkins worried about survival. On a crisp October morning in 1993, he walked into Kellam Elementary School carrying a loaded .25 caliber pistol. Teachers found the weapon in his backpack during a routine check. Fully loaded. Safety off. A 7-year-old with his finger on a trigger that could have ended everything. The incident report disappeared into bureaucratic files. The gun went to evidence lockup. The boy went home to a family where violence wasn't an aberration, it was tradition. The Jenkins name had been synonymous with Omaha crime for decades. Court records stretched back to the 1960s. Burglary, assault, drug dealing, armed robbery. Over 100 family convictions spanning 3 generations. Aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings all cycling through Douglas County Correctional Center like it was a family reunion. Nikko's grandmother had served time. His mother had served time. His siblings would serve time. In the Jenkins family, prison wasn't a deterrent, it was an inevitability. By age 11, Nikko had been placed in foster care 7 times. Each placement failed. Behavioral problems escalated. Violence became his native language. Teachers documented incidents of threatening classmates, destroying property, setting small fires in school bathrooms. At 13, he committed armed robbery with a toy gun. At 14, he graduated to real weapons. At 15, Judge Peter Batalin sentenced him to adult prison for carjacking, the first of many trips through Nebraska's correctional system. Prison records show a pattern. Back in. Each stint longer than the last. Each release more dangerous than before. The question haunts every expert who studied the case. Was this genetics, environment, or choice? The answer would be written in blood across Omaha streets. August 11, 2:47 a.m. The killing began at Spring Lake Park with surgical precision. One Uribe Pena, 26, never saw it coming. One bullet behind the right ear. Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, 29, tried to run. The door hung open where he'd almost escaped. 2 friends. 2 fathers. 2 lives extinguished before dawn broke over Omaha. Jenkins walked away from the white pickup truck like he was leaving a grocery store. Casual. Unhurried. The .40 caliber Smith & Wesson still warm in his waistband. But Spring Lake Park was just the appetizer. The main course would feed a city's nightmares for years. 8 days passed. Omaha police worked the double homicide with methodical desperation. Detective Derek Moise interviewed witnesses who'd seen nothing. Collected evidence that led nowhere. Ran ballistics that matched no known weapon. The killer had vanished. August 19th, 18th and Clark Streets. Curtis Bradford, 33, thought he was meeting friends. Construction work had been slow. Money tight. A father trying to provide for his family any way he could. He parked his car near the intersection and waited. Nikko Jenkins emerged from the shadows. But he didn't come alone. His sister, Erica Jenkins, stood beside him as Bradford stepped out of his vehicle. Family business conducted with family participation. The first shot dropped Bradford to the cracked asphalt. The second shot fired by Erica ensured he'd never stand again. When your own blood helps spill someone else's, there's no line left to cross. August 21st, 11:47 p.m. Andrea Kruger, 33, pulled into her driveway after a long shift at Westroads Mall. 3 children slept inside the house she'd worked double shifts to afford. Homework checked. Lunches packed for tomorrow. A single mother's endless cycle of responsibility and love. She never made it to her front door. Jenkins materialized beside her SUV like death itself. 5 shots through the driver's window. Andrea died gripping her steering wheel. Family photos scattered across blood-soaked upholstery. 10 days. 4 murders. A city held hostage by invisible terror. August 22nd. Omaha Police Headquarters. 4 bodies in 11 days. For crime scenes. One city terrorized by a ghost who killed and vanished like smoke. Detective Derek Moise spread crime scene photos across his desk. Spring Lake Park. 18th and Clark. 168th and Fort. Blood spatter patterns told stories in a language only forensics experts could read. The ballistics report arrived at 3:17 p.m. Same weapon. Same killer. Different victims scattered across Omaha like pieces of a puzzle drawn in blood. But the breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Jenkins couldn't keep his mouth shut. Street informants whispered names to detectives working overtime shifts. Security cameras captured grainy footage of a figure moving through shadows. Cell phone towers pinged locations that formed a digital breadcrumb trail across the city. By August 30th, every piece of evidence pointed to one name. Nikko Allen Jenkins. Surveillance teams watched his known associates. Tapped phones recorded conversations. Undercover officers haunted the North Omaha neighborhoods where the Jenkins family ruled through fear and reputation. But Jenkins wasn't hiding. He was planning. September 3rd, 6:45 a.m. 20 officers surrounded a house on Dodge Street. Tactical gear. Body armor. Weapons drawn for a man who'd already proven he'd kill anyone, anywhere, anytime. They expected a firefight. A chase. A final showdown befitting America's newest spree killer. Instead, they found Nikko Jenkins eating cereal at a kitchen table, watching morning cartoons like a suburban father preparing for another ordinary day. The man who'd terrorized an entire city surrendered without firing a single shot because an ancient Egyptian serpent god told him his work was finished. Detective James Bogner read Jenkins his Miranda rights while the killer explained how Apophis, the ancient Egyptian god of chaos and darkness, had commanded every murder. For victims. 4 sacrifices. 4 steps toward some cosmic plan that existed only in Jenkins' fractured mind. Or so he claimed. The confession lasted 6 hours. Every detail. Every location. Every bullet fired in service to a deity that had been dead for thousands of years. Douglas County District Court. May 2014. The man who shuffled into the courtroom bore little resemblance to the killer who terrorized Omaha 8 months earlier. Nikko Jenkins' forehead displayed fresh razor cuts spelling Satan in jagged letters. His tongue had been split down the middle like a serpent's. Self-mutilation had transformed his face into a canvas of deliberate disfigurement. Was this the calculated performance of a manipulative psychopath, or the genuine breakdown of a fractured mind? Court-appointed psychiatrist Dr. Nicole Buslog spent 40 hours evaluating Jenkins across 6 months. Her conclusion: competent to stand trial. The Egyptian god claims were elaborate fiction designed to avoid responsibility for cold-blooded murder. Defense psychiatrist Dr. Mark Speckart disagreed completely. Severe mental illness. Delusional disorder. A man genuinely convinced that ancient deities commanded his every action. Judge Peter Batalin presided over a legal battlefield where psychiatrists wielded competing diagnoses like weapons. Competency hearings stretched across 2 years while Jenkins continued carving symbols into his flesh with makeshift blades fashioned from jail toiletries. The prosecution presented physical evidence that spoke louder than any psychiatric evaluation. 4 victims. 4 weapons. 4 crime scenes linked by ballistics and DNA. The murders were methodical, planned, executed with precision that suggested clear criminal intent. Jenkins' behavior during court proceedings alternated between catatonic silence and explosive outbursts. He claimed to hear voices speaking ancient Egyptian, drew hieroglyphs on legal documents, stared at courtroom walls for hours without blinking. But the most chilling moments came when his mask slipped, revealing glimpses of the calculating intelligence underneath the theatrical madness. May 30, 2017. Judge Batalin delivered the verdict to a packed courtroom. Guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder. The sentence followed Nebraska's mandatory statute for multiple murders during a single criminal episode. Death. 4 times over. Additional sentences totaled 450 years for weapons charges, robbery, and terroristic threats. Even if appeals overturned the death penalties, Jenkins would never see freedom again. The families of Juan Uribe Pena, Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, Curtis Bradford, and Andrea Kruger finally heard the words they'd waited 4 years to receive. Justice, delivered in the language killers understand. Tecumseh Correctional Institution. Cell Block H. Unit 4.48 years, Nikko Jenkins has occupied a 12 by 7-foot concrete box designed to house Nebraska's most dangerous killers. 23 hours of solitary confinement. 1 hour of recreation in a steel cage. 3 meals pushed through a slot in bulletproof steel. Death row inmates typically spend decades fighting their sentences. Appeals. Writs. Legal motions filed by defense attorneys determined to keep their clients breathing. But on March 15, 2025, Jenkins filed a handwritten petition that stunned everyone who read it. "I no longer desire to appeal my death sentence," he wrote in cramped block letters across 3 pages of legal paper. "I wish for the state of Nebraska to carry out my execution as soon as possible." The document landed on District Judge Peter Batalin's desk like a hand grenade. Defense attorneys had spent $50,000 on psychiatric evaluations arguing Jenkins was too mentally ill to be executed. Now their own client was demanding to die. Was this another elaborate manipulation from a man who'd spent years gaming the system? Or had 8 years of concrete walls and fluorescent lights finally broken whatever remained of Nikko Jenkins' fractured psyche? The same question that haunted his trial now echoed through appellate courts. Was Jenkins crazy like a fox, or just plain crazy? Nebraska's last execution occurred in 2018. Carrie Dean Moore died by lethal injection after 28 years on death row. The state's electric chair, nicknamed Old Sparky, had been retired in 2008 after decades of mechanical failures and legal challenges. Jenkins' case remained tangled in automatic appeals mandated by Nebraska law. Even his request to waive appeals faced judicial review. The Nebraska Supreme Court would ultimately decide whether a man could voluntarily surrender his life to the state he'd terrorized. Meanwhile, the families of Juan Uribe Pena, Jorge Cajiga Ruiz, Curtis Bradford, and Andrea Kruger waited. Justice delayed remained justice denied. The concrete walls of death row offered no answers, only the endless ticking of time toward an uncertain end. August 2013. 10 days. 4 lives. The numbers tell only part of the story. Juan Uribe Pena left behind 2 young daughters who still ask their grandmother when daddy's coming home. Jorge Kajigurui's mother keeps his work boots by the front door waiting for a son who will never return from his last delivery run. Curtis Bradford's children grew up without bedtime stories told in their father's voice. Andrea Kruger's 3 kids learned to tie their shoes, ride bicycles, and navigate heartbreak without the woman who worked double shifts to give them everything. The dead don't heal. Only the living carry that burden. Omaha still bears invisible scars from Jenkins' rampage. Residents who once left doors unlocked now install security systems. Parents who let children play unsupervised after dark now count heads at sunset. Trust, once broken by a stranger's violence, rebuilds slowly if at all. The questions that haunted Jenkins' trial echo through time without resolution. Was he a product of generational trauma and brain chemistry gone wrong? A calculating predator who weaponized mental illness as legal strategy? Or something more disturbing, a glimpse into evil that defies medical diagnosis or psychological explanation? Nebraska's death row holds 49 inmates. Some have waited decades for appeals to exhaust. Others file motion after motion, grasping for legal loopholes that might spare their lives. Jenkins alone demanded acceleration toward his own execution. Perhaps that final contradiction captures the essence of Nikko Jenkins, a man whose every action generated more questions than answers. The families of his victims deserve closure. Nebraska deserves resolution. Justice demands finality. But in a case where madness and manipulation blur beyond recognition, where family dysfunction spans generations, where gods and serpents whisper commands in a killer's fractured mind, does any answer truly satisfy? The concrete walls of death row offer no revelations. Only silence. And time. What do you believe? Was this justice deferred or justice denied? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more investigations into America's most controversial death row cases.